Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood and the barrister and former government minister Anna Soubry. Great to see you both. Now, let's take a quick look at what is on some of those front pages. Well, on a front page printed entirely in black and white, The Express marks tomorrow's 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, picturing 94-year-old Holocaust survivor Susan Pollack. The Mirror's front page also focuses on tomorrow's anniversary, featuring Holocaust survivor Mala Tribik's story as she revisits the Auschwitz camp. The Telegraph reports on the expectation that Donald Trump will make his first international trip of his second term to the UK, following a 45-minute call with Sir Keir Starmer. The Time adds that the Prime Minister is expected to resist President Trump's pressure to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030, this due to public finance concerns. The Guardian reports on Donald Trump's proposal to relocate Palestinians from Gaza to neighbouring countries, a suggestion rejected by US allies and criticised as illegal. The Metro reports that the National Crime Agency has closed down more than 8,000 social media accounts promoting people smuggling, some of which offered prizes to people if they referred friends to traffickers. The Eye says more A&E patients are expected to be treated at home and in local hubs under the Health Secretary's NHS reforms. The Mail claims more than 4 million people will face council tax hikes above the legal maximum, with one area seeing a 25% rise. And the Star hears that 4 new storms will hit Britain in the next week alone. And we are joined in the studio tonight by Theo Usherwood and Anna Soubry. So, interesting sort of juxtaposition. Of course, a lot of papers go with the anniversary of the Auschwitz liberation tomorrow. We will obviously discuss that. But another common thread is, I guess, reactions to Donald Trump in a variety of impact that he's had, depending on what issue he's talking about. Let's start with the front page of the Times. So one close to home here, Starmer to defy Trump over cash for defence. Now, we know that Donald Trump has been very vociferous about NATO countries stepping up, and he wants the British military to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. Anna.
Yes, well, the headline says exactly that. And then it goes on to say, as you say, that Trump, because we know that he's agitated, probably with good reason. I mean, not for me to praise Donald Trump, but when he makes comments about the contribution that America makes, it's not matched by the contribution of the many other countries in NATO, and there have been other examples like the World Health Organization. Of course, he walked out of that, which is not a bright move in my view. But he makes this point, and of course, according to the Times, Starmer makes the riposte, which is, well, we can't afford any more than what we're paying at the moment because of the huge strains and constraints on public expenditure. But otherwise, and that's the little bit underneath that headline is, but leaders avoided subject in warm first call. Seemed to have avoided quite a lot, didn't they?
Yes, they did. I mean, you know, as Anna says, Donald Trump would ideally like NATO countries spending 5% of their GDP on defence. And, of course, this is crucial as he seeks to broker some sort of deal between Ukraine's President Zelensky and Vladimir Putin of Russia. He doesn't think that America should be continuing just to stump up the cash for NATO. But whilst this may have been a warm first phone call, warm and personal, the Times says, and he praised previously Donald Trump aboard Air Force One, the Prime Minister is doing a very good job, and suggested the first official overseas trip could either be to this country, to Britain, or to Saudi Arabia. The difficult, thorny issues of defence spending, and of course the Treasury has its fingers in its ears. It doesn't want to come up with that extra $75 billion to hit 2.5% of GDP by 2030. But of course we've also got the appointment of Lord Mandelson, yet to be ratified by the White House as the UK ambassador to Washington, and the Chagos Islands deal. Now, the Times reporting the real conversation that we all need to, we'd all wish to be a fly on the wall for, is going to be between Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary, which is going to be taking place as early as tomorrow. And that's going to be the one where actually the two men are going to sit down and talk about the really difficult issues.
But it does seem like Trump is striking a more conciliatory tone, at least in the language that he's using.
Yeah, I mean, he's not being belligerent and threatening, be unpleasant like he has to the Danes about Greenland and so on and so forth. So, I mean, and he said warm words about Keir Starmer, as he should, in my view. But, so I think that's a good thing, because the other thing they didn't talk about was tariffs.
Yes. And I think yes. Just to mention the poor Danish Prime Minister when they had that phone call over Greenland, the phone call there was described as horrendous.
Gosh, maybe they're learning.
But I think what is certainly in Westminster, the penny that seems to have dropped is that actually Donald Trump needs to be handled more sensitively. You know, if you think back to a couple of weeks ago, it was all systems go when it comes to the Chagos Islands deal. They backed off from that, and Starmer is taking a much more, kid's glove approach to dealing with this president. It is not business as usual. Get the relationship set and then see where, what can be hammered out in terms of Chagos Islands, Lord Mandelson and the rest. From that.
OK, well, so if the language is more conciliatory when it comes to the UK, it was actually pretty shocking about the Middle East. So let's look at The Guardian. Their headline, quite a strong one, Trump accused of ethnic cleansing over call for Palestinians to quit Gaza. Now, he's been saying things about Gaza. Obviously, the ceasefire seems to be holding. He's been saying it could be a beautiful place, that it just needs a clean out. And also, he floated the idea, didn't he, Theo, that basically all the Palestinians could just be relocated to countries like Jordan and Egypt, and Jordan already hosts millions of Palestinian refugees.
We shouldn't be surprised by these comments from the new US president. I mean, his son-in-law Jared Kushner has previously talked about the Gaza Strip being beyond, being completely destroyed and levelled to the ground, and the fact that it is no place for the Palestinians to return to. Keir Starmer, Joe Biden, other European leaders have repeatedly talked about the promise or the prospect of a two-state solution to resolve this conflict. But Israel, in the wake of October the 7th, was adamant that it could never happen again. And it was very difficult from the language coming out from Netanyahu going back, and of course he's released a statement saying he's going to allow some Palestinians back into northern Gaza, but it was very difficult listening to the rhetoric from his cabinet and of course from the Israeli Prime Minister himself to see how Gaza was going to return to its previous state and then go beyond into a fully fledged state, because the threat, October the 7th from the Israeli government's point of view was not something they could ever allow to repeat.
But as this piece makes clear, and everybody seems to forget, Jordan in particular has taken well over 2 million Palestinians. I mean, there are people from previous wars who have been living in so-called refugee camps. I say so-called because they've been there in some instances for 25, 30 years, right? And the strain on Jordan, I went a few years ago to see just the number of Syrians that they've taken, never mind the Palestinians. And the idea that Egypt, I mean, this idea that it's sort of, well, why don't you just take these 2 million people? I mean, OK, this is their birthplace. They've been there for God knows how many hundreds of years. And it's all in stark contrast to a man who's throwing out a whole load of Mexican people and people from South America fleeing poverty and everything else, and they can all clear. It's just, I mean, this is horrible stuff, and it's profoundly ignorant. I mean, to say that it just needs a clean out, it's really awful, scary stuff. These are real human beings, and they have been driven out of their homes. Whatever your views are about the horrors of Hamas, that at the end of the day, you've got children presumably being forced into countries, and there is no indication that either Egypt or Jordan want them in any event.
No, and of course the Palestinians...
Or have the capacity for education, healthcare system, whatever it might be. And it is there's no, it's a horrendous humanitarian situation, crisis, that is likely to unfold as a result of this. But Israel, it was very, as a result of, part of what Hamas did on October the 7th was designed in its brutality to create this breaking point where there would be no coming back. And Israel cannot...
But is the two parts... Sorry to... But the two-state solution, is that really gone in the people of Israel? I mean, obviously Netanyahu, it's definitely gone. But has it lost any support within Israel itself?
I think from speaking to my friends and the people of Israel, it cannot be allowed that Gaza becomes this hotbed for Hamas from which it can then launch terrorist attacks where you take people hostage and killed 1,200 people in the most brutal circumstances. And they cannot simply allow that to happen again.
Forgive me, I think we just need to move on because there's other stories. Just very, very briefly, if we touch on the Daily Telegraph, the state visit, and you mentioned it briefly, Theo. Last time, I think it was Saudi Arabia was the first country we went to, apparently because quite a lot of money was involved. Could be the UK as well, very briefly. Theo.
Yes, I think, everybody, wants to be we all want to be the first to welcome Donald Trump, the world leader, or European leader to your country. And I think, if Starmer is at the front of the queue, then that's only a good thing for Britain.
Okay. Let's now go to a very striking front page, the Daily Express. Let's bring it up because, of course, what's striking about it is that it's black and white. Strong words, never forget, obviously to mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. Anna.
It is, and it's a stunning front page, and credit to the Daily Express for it, because not only does it show Susan Pollock as she is now at the age of 94, because it shows her there at the bottom as a young girl before she went into the horror and the nightmare of Auschwitz. And tomorrow will be an extraordinary day. And a rather remarkable day, and probably the last of its kind because there aren't many survivors. There weren't very many survivors, of course, in the first place. And I think also one always has to remember 6 million people murdered for no other reason than their race, their religion. And overwhelmingly, the majority were Jews. There were others. There were gay people. There were Roma, for example. Even people that had been captured from the Russian armies. But overwhelmingly, this slaughter of millions of Jewish people, which we must never, ever forget, because you don't think you live in a world which does those things. And we do, even now.
And we can keep this front page up, but I just want to mention that the Daily Telegraph has on its front page the King is going to make history with the pilgrimage to Auschwitz, Theo.
First British monarch. I didn't realise this.
The
Queen Elizabeth, the late Queen Elizabeth II had been, but he's going to make what the Daily Telegraph is describing as a deeply personal pilgrimage to Auschwitz-Birkenau, and I think he's going to walk through the gates of the camp. It's going to be a moment.
It really is, and we're going to have live coverage here on Sky starting at 2 p.m. live from Poland. OK, well, coming up, we'll be looking at more of tomorrow's stories, including is the Chancellor Rachel Reeves really plotting a backdoor return to the EU? We'll discuss that next.